feels like every single day since I started streaming this game at twitch.tv/Brax, I'm getting questions about the factory non-stop. As having to set up your own automation in a 3D space is a pretty new thing to gacha games, I wanted to make a short video kind of going over some basic beginner tips and some amazing resources that you guys can use to help improve your factories, or even just skip them entirely if you just really don't like the gameplay. So with all that being said, my name is Braxophone, Lavatain is wet, and let's talk about the Arknight's Endfield factory. So real quick, I don't really have the most insane credentials for this, because as you can see, even though I do have a functional factory, it's not necessarily God's gift to mankind. I haven't exactly made the perfect systems or anything like that. In fact, that last factory was a blueprint, and this is what my work actually looks like. But that doesn't mean I don't understand what to do, it just means that I suck at putting these things together. Now, if you are just looking for good blueprints, I do have some good resources for you, and I'll go over those in this video. But personally, I really enjoy the factory, and I think it will be beneficial if you guys at least understand the basics of it. So what should you actually be making? Well, there's a ton of items that are super useful, but some really stick out to me, especially when you're developing your region. All of these other factories also have entire outposts around them, and you have the ability to trade these outposts in exchange for these Valley Stock Bills, or as I like to call them, V-Bucks. And these Valley Stock Bills can be used for tons of different items, including pulls, progression items, weapons, and friendship items for your operators, as well as market manipulation, of course. And for that reason, I think one of the best things you can do with your factory passively is just try to create things that you can trade to these outposts. The really easy one is just to spam out Origo Crusts in the early game and just trade them 1-to-1. Because these are so plentiful, you're probably not going to run into any issues. So this is one way you can figure out what to make. The other important items are your gear, your tactical, which is how you heal in battle, and in my opinion, these batteries. Now, the batteries aren't something you'll need like a ton of until late game, but these batteries are how you increase your max power at the top, and it allows you to build not only more items in your factory, but also zip lines, power, mining units, etc. So overall, in my opinion, the most important things are these batteries, buck capsules for healing, and anything you can make in the gear assembly tab to progress your characters. So here we are in Valley 4, and I do have the fully expanded area. I didn't start a new account for this or anything, but I want to go over a couple key concepts. So factories in Arknight's Endfield are all input and output, and that's the simplest way to look at it. The arrows out are your output, the arrows in are your input. Now, when you're making things early on in the game, they try to hold your hand, and to be honest, it's pretty dang annoying. So a lot of people skip through it, and I completely understand why. So I'll try to make this as simple and quick as possible. Let's say that you want to make these Origo Crusts. First, you'll need Originium and a refining unit. You put the output of Originium into the input of the refining unit, and then the refining unit has an output of Origo Crusts into the input of the factory. And I need to give it power, actually, so don't forget your pylons. And now it's doing that. That's like the simplest way to look at it, right? But this probably isn't what people are struggling with. After all, the game basically forces you to do this. What you guys probably want to know more about is how you end up with stuff like this. If you're trying to make some healing items like Buck Capsule A's, you need to know what items you need and how to get there from start to finish. Now, the cool thing is, if you're trying to make an item you don't have, like let's say we go ahead and we want to make some like blue gear, and we don't have this Ferium component, if you click on it, or if you tap on it if you're on mobile, you go over here, you can actually click on the last piece of equipment you need to craft it. But what that actually does is it takes you to a page with the entire formula. Many of you guys probably already knew this, but I found out some people in my stream didn't, so I wanted to include it. So as you can see, this takes ferrite and originium, a refining unit for both of them, and then both of them are inputs into a gearing unit and then output into the Ferium components. So let's do that now. So we have ferrite coming out of here, originium ore coming out of here. Do that. We'll do that. Both of them need to go into a refining unit. So put 2 refining units here. We can move the electric pylon between them, so that way we get power, or even better, we can move it over here. And then we put a gearing unit right here. Boom, spits out both of these. And it makes very simple Ferium components for making blue tier gear. Very easy. Now, just to collect this, we can hand collect it, or we can put it back into the factory. Once you have 10 of both, it's gonna spit out one of the parts, and then you just let this run all night long. For those of you guys who don't know, the factory does run while you're offline. So it's great to set this up to run while you're not there, so that way when you come back, you can have a ton of an item. Now, that's just one simple example of a system. Let's move on to purple tier gear, where we actually need these 2 components, which I'm gonna be honest, the first time I saw them, it was absolutely terrifying. And here's why. Because look at this giant tree of items you have to feed in. So what I like to do here is, because I have 2 monitors, I like to screenshot this page and into 2 different parts, and then that way I can kind of bring up both screenshots while I'm working on it, and I don't have to keep tabbing into that, because I do think it's a little annoying to have to constantly go check the recipe. So first off, we're gonna need to make sure we have amethyst and originium Iridium, which by this point in the game, if you're making these components, you definitely do, but you're also gonna need some sand leaves. Now, this is a later game thing, but all you're gonna need is one single sand leaf, and I'm gonna show you exactly why. A cool thing that you'll see in a lot of blueprints, and you'll probably see a lot of players doing, is making an infinite sand leaf source, or just an infinite source of some sort of plant. What you're basically going to do is put one seed picking unit in the middle of two planting units, and have the planting unit's arrows facing the opposite direction as the seed picking unit. What you're gonna do is loop a planting unit and a seed picking unit together, so that way there's always seeds turning into a plant and a plant turning into seeds. Then you're gonna take the seed picking unit and also output into the other planting unit, but do not connect the planting unit to the original seed picking unit, and this is gonna be your normal output. Now, the reason this works is because you can take one single plant and turn it into two seeds every single time, which means that for every one plant, there will be an output right here where I'm circling and right here where I'm circling into the two separate planting units. So once I give it a little bit of power, it's gonna start outputting and infinitely regenerating the amount of plants, multiplying them, and giving you a consistent output. The cool thing about this is it doesn't require an output from your automation core, because you can just plant a seed in it and it's going to automatically go. So it actually saves you quite a bit of space by not needing to use an output and just being able to use this. And I'm gonna show you an alternative design for this later. But okay, the first thing that I like to do when I'm doing longer systems is actually set up all of the units that I'm going to need in a row and in a sequence. So for example, on the top row for my Originium, I'm going to need a shredding unit, a grinding unit, a refining unit, a refining unit, and a gearing unit. So with Originium, plan to come out of here, an amethyst way over here. First thing we're gonna do, put a shredding unit, then a grinding unit, two refining units in a row. Oops, not that close. And then lastly into a gearing unit. Also along the way, we're gonna need that shredding unit for the planter here. And then next we have to work on the amethyst output. Now, before I do that, I am gonna do one other thing, and I'm gonna actually check how many Originium to sand leaf we need. And it looks like we need 2 Originium to 1 sand leaf powder. And if we check the shredding unit, it actually shows that we're only gonna get 1 Originium per Originium ore that we spend. So I'm actually gonna have 2 outputs of Originium ore to make sure that our speed of development is fast enough. So I'm gonna put another shredding unit right here and move this over one. Now we can work on the amethyst, which we need to turn into amethyst fiber first. So it's gonna be a refining unit, then into a shredding unit, into their own grinding unit, into a refining unit, and then into the gearing unit. So now that we've set up this entire line of all of the units that we're gonna need to make in order, we can start putting in our electric pylons, which we are going to need to power all of the machines here. And I've left a little bit of space for all of them, but to be honest, it kind of just depends on your base and how you have set everything up. So this should be more than enough. All right, so now it's time to start organizing the outputs. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the Originium outputs into the shredding units. Then I'm gonna connect the shredding units to the grinding unit, which is gonna give us a 2-to-1 ratio of the sand leaf powder. Now I'm actually gonna move this over a little bit because I miscalculated something for the video, but that's okay. So now the planting unit, I'm actually gonna have it go straight into the shredding unit. And something you'll notice about this, and this is a thing that everyone should know, if you are using sand leaf powder and you are turning it into dust, you actually get 3 dust to 1 sand leaf powder. However, you'll notice that we only actually need 1 sand leaf powder dust anyways. So what we can do is we can actually go ahead and put 1 output of the shredding unit into the grinding unit, but then we can also feed 2 outputs of the sand leaf powder right here. This will help us collect the sand leaf powder and then be able to output it elsewhere, or I'll show you another alternative later. Here's the amethyst stream now, so we're gonna go ahead and take this refining unit into shredding unit into grinding unit, and now we need sand leaf powder in here as well, and it is going to be 2 amethyst powder to 1 sand leaf powder. So what we can do is actually activate one of our other outputs over here. I'm gonna put a refining unit, a shredding unit, electric pylon, make sure that's set to amethyst, boom, boom. And we are gonna go ahead and block all of these, but that's not gonna matter. This is just for the sake of the tutorial here. So now we're gonna be getting all this dust and it's gonna flow into the grinding unit. Now at this point, you'll notice we have a bit of a problem. I don't have a way to get the sand leaf powder over into this grinding unit because of the way it's set up. Well, there's a couple options that you have. The first one is to make it very, very messy, which is what I personally do, and use these belt overlays to basically cross over on top of all of the other ones to get where we need to go. The other option is we can move this guy out one, and we can also turn this output into a sand leaf output, which will allow us to bring it around. We're gonna go ahead and hug this whole system and put it into here. And that's a bit more of a longer, more space consuming version, but this also works. Right now, we don't care about the most efficient use of space. Right now, we care about getting you guys to understand the factory, how it works, input and output, and the step-by-step process of what goes where. Keep in mind, we are constantly referring to this page that's gonna be showing us the inputs and outputs of everything. So far, so good. We just need to get everything into the grinding unit and then output into refining, and refining here. So we can start outputting into the refining units, output the grinding unit into this refining unit, then output both of these into the gearing unit. And there you go. This is a very long, very complex version of what will net you some Cryston components. Now, there's a reason that I made this so, I guess, poorly, for the lack of a better term. One is just to show you that it doesn't really matter how you get it done, as long as you get it done, because the hardest thing about this game is just experimenting. You just have to try out a bunch of different things until it works, and eventually you'll just get better at it. The other reason is because this is actually the most basic and most difficult way to get all of the outputs that you need. Because as you go around the world and find those wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube men, you actually get access to these skill points on the basic AIC plan, and what you can do is go down the power line until you get to the depot bus. That should be unlockable at basic AIC 2, so about mid-game. And the depot bus is a really big deal because it's what allows you to put all of these outputs right next to each other along the sides of the factory. You no longer have to use these 6 outputs from the different angles that can go all the way around or anything like that. You can place them all next to each other and make a nice streamlined item farm. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I'm gonna go and import this blueprint that Xlice posted on his Twitter. Now, Xlice's blueprint is actually pretty well optimized and confined to one single line, which means that you can do multiple of these at a time. What you're going to do is use your depot unloaders, put them here, one there, and one here. This one actually doesn't include the planter or the shredder or the refining unit for the amethyst. So what we can do on the sides here is we can actually make our own systems for that as well. Maybe we can use our planter from earlier, but then instead of using these, we can actually just feed these straight into the factory. So we now have an infinite source of sand leaves. Now that we have an infinite source of sand leaves, we can set this to output sand leaf. We'll set this to output amethyst fiber. We'll set this to originium powder. Now I don't have any originium powder. That's totally fine. Watch this. We're gonna go ahead and put a shredding unit here because that's how you make originium powder. We're gonna put a refining unit here for the amethyst parts, originium, and the amethyst. Boom, boom. Now these are being produced, and actually even better yet, I'm gonna move them over here, and I'm gonna put them into Protocol Stash. Now, if you guys don't know what Protocol Stash actually is, this is one of the greatest tools that you'll unlock later along your AIC tree. So the Protocol Stash is essentially a constant transferring device where you can input things into it, and it will store them in your AIC unit, or you can just use it for storage if you want as well. But as long as you have belt-free TF in here, these will all store inside of your base's depot, all across Valley 4 or Wuling, whichever region you're in, which will then allow them to be output right here. I'm gonna optimize this a little more, do this, Control C, and I'm gonna actually make the same thing again, because what I'm gonna do now is optimize Xlice's blueprint a little bit for its output. So I'm gonna go ahead and move this machine to input right there. I'm gonna make this line move right here. And now we have room to add in even more. So we're gonna add 2 more depot unloaders here. We're gonna go ahead and put in the originium powder, and we're gonna go ahead and put in the amethyst fibers, add these here. We're gonna route it along here. And now, as you can see, we actually have a higher ratio of these going through, which means that we're going to produce the Cryston powder and the dense originium powder faster, which means we're going to get more inputs to here. And then lastly, it's also going to go into a protocol stash. So this is how you can take something that's like a huge, extended, long, windy mess and turn it into a much more compact line. And then you can also do something like this, or you can extend the line out further and add all these machines to this machine as well. But this way, in my opinion, looks so much cleaner than doing something like this. Even though this gets the job done, eventually you'll figure out ways to kind of compact everything a little bit and make it all just feel better overall. I'm telling you, these depot unloaders and the protocol stash make your life significantly easier. Protocol stash even has other uses as well. Here's another really cool seed picking unit setup where it's more of a square instead of this like rectangle shape. It does feel like it takes up a little bit more space, but it looks a lot nicer. And the cool thing about this one is, and this is from Rednu, by the way. The cool thing about this one is that you put your seeds into the seed picking unit, and then it goes into the planters. Then they're going to go into the protocol stash. And what's going to happen is that some of them will be sent away, but some of them will pass straight through the protocol stash. And then once these lines all get kind of full and the protocol stash can't spit things out as fast as it would like, it will start sending them to storage. So it makes it so you'll be gaining plants and seeds because they're going into the protocol stash, and once it clogs up, it just sends them all to your bank. And then once you get enough Cryston components, you can go to your gear and you can finally craft the purple tier gear and improve your characters overall. And just kind of adding this in for anyone who needs a reference, this is the AIC Steward. This is going to be what allows you to expand your area and to get the depot buses on the side that allow you to have those outputs. So have fun with it. I think that it'll be a massive help. And lastly, a question I get asked a ton on stream is what the difference is between current data and theoretical data. This one is actually really simple. The current data is what's actually happening. Let's look at buck flowers. So we have a yield of 240 and a usage of 240. This means that we're bringing in 240 buck flower and the usage is 240. So exactly the same rate per minute. However, the theoretical data shows 270 per minute and usage 270 per minute. The theoretical data is just what the data would actually be if everything was operating at full capacity. The Originium powder thing right here is actually quite interesting because it has a yield of 450 per minute and a usage of 450 per minute, but theoretically I should be yielding 510 and I should be using 600. So this means there's a bottleneck in whatever machines are using Originium on my bases. Basically, if the theoretical data doesn't line up with the current data, that means that your machines need to be fixed. Something is not optimized about them. But as I always say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Overall, the factory isn't that hard to understand. You just have to take a lot of steps and do things one at a time. It can look really overwhelming. I'm someone with ADHD, and when I see that list of tasks, I'm like, hell no, get me out of there. But it's like cooking. You just need to get all of the ingredients, and rather than shop for them at the store, you have to make them all. But as promised, I am also going to show you guys some awesome blueprint resources that you can use to try and improve your factories if you're not really understanding things, or if you just want a cheat code, which is totally fine. Trust me, I've used them too, and it does speed things up quite a bit. If you are someone who just cannot stomach the factory, I found this website called Talos Pioneers. And essentially, people can make and share blueprints on here, and you can basically look up items and tags and things like that, and you'll be able to find blueprints. Now, I think this is a pretty new resource, but I haven't seen anyone actually talk about it. So if you guys are looking for blueprints, there might be stuff here. If you guys make a cool blueprint and you want to share it, check it out here. Also, if you guys ever use the website enka.network for Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail, there's also some blueprints up here for HC batteries, butt capsules, etc. And over on my Twitter account, sometimes I will go ahead and share things like this battery farm that I made, and also this blueprint for basically every early game item in the game. So after recording this, I do feel like it's a bit of a longer video, but I hope it was helpful. I tried to make it as simple as I can to help people out who are like a little confused on how everything works. And if this video helped you, please let me know. Also, if you guys find any other cool blueprint resources, make sure to share them below to help out other people who are looking for those resources. And I hope you guys are enjoying Endfield as much as I am. Subscribe for more Endfield content, and I'll talk to you later.